It's 2025. You can't scroll for more than 30 seconds without seeing someone fantasy booking a feud that'll never happen or tearing apart one that just did. Welcome to the IWC, the internet wrestling community, where everyone's got a hot take, everyone's an armchair booker, and sometimes it just feels like no one's actually enjoying the show anymore. So today, I want to talk about something that every wrestling fan, myself included, needs to hear from time to time. How to enjoy wrestling again without losing your mind online. You see, the IWC does get a little bit of a bad rap. And honestly, sometimes that's partly fair. And I include myself in that as well. It's a bit of the Wild West out there at times. You've got Twitter, you've got Reddit, you've got YouTube, you've got TikTok. Everyone is talking, consuming wrestling 24/7. There's breaking news tweets every 10 minutes. You've got 3, 4, 5 hour review videos. You have endless fantasy bookings, usually from me trying to shoehorn Joe Henry into every single match, every single feud, every single championship fight that we possibly can. Endless subreddits out there dedicated to sort of fixing the WWE. And yeah, that constant chatter can sometimes make it feel really easy to forget that wrestling, is supposed to be fun. But here's the thing. It's not all bad. The IWC gave us a community, right? It gave us access to each other. It gave us a whole host of people out there that you can, with the tap of a button, you can go talk to them about Raw, SmackDown, TNA, other promotions like AEW and New Japan. And you can talk to people all over the world just instantly, just the click of your fingers. And when wrestling's great, the buzz that you see and you hear online, it is electric. It's kind of like being in the crowd without actually being physically present at a wrestling show. The problem, in my mind, isn't that the IWC exists. The problem is not that we exist. The problem is it's so easy to get lost in that. And this is where things maybe start to go a little sideways. So somewhere along the line, wrestling stopped being something we enjoyed and started being something that we all endlessly evaluated. Like when you were younger, you used to watch your WrestleMania main events and just think that was absolutely insane. When you saw people like Sabu and ECW just going crazy and putting themselves through all sorts of mental and physical torture, you just thought, this is just nuts, I can't stop watching this. Whereas maybe now, in 2025, it's, but maybe the storytelling didn't make sense, and Meltzer only gave it 3.75 stars. Now, the latter definitely can attest to the fact that Daz not a fan of that, but you understand what I'm getting there. A lot of people are obsessed, and again, I include myself in this, with being right and calling the result before it happens, guessing who's going to debut, predicting the next heel turn. And when you get it right, you do feel like, you give yourself a pat on the back. We do it quite a lot here, and we enjoy the fact that Triple H clearly listens to the podcast. Triple H is clearly out there enjoying this with us as well, because we tend to get a few things right early, example being the Naomi heel turn. I believe Saunders called that something like 3 months before it happened. However, when members of the IWC get it wrong, you can see this meltdown online, like they've been personally betrayed. And don't get me wrong, I get it. That you get that sort of dopamine hit if you get something right. Like if you beat Fightful or Cultaholic, these kind of big guys to the punch, you're gonna feel like $1 million, and it feels good. Kind of like as if you've won like an insider lottery. It's probably a good way to describe it. That was probably how I would describe it. But there is a sort of harsh truth that I think I want to cut through to here. That mindset ruins the fun a little bit. When you're watching to be correct, you've instead decided to stop watching to be entertained. You've stopped caring about what's actually happening in front of you. You start to care more about, oh, well, how did this match my personal fantasy booking from like 3 or 4 weeks ago? And ultimately, wrestling, the WWE, like SmackDown, Raw, NXT, or Saturday Night main events, like they are a show. You know, it's not always meant to go your way. It is meant to make you feel something, though. Like you're meant to get like a level of joy or frustration, shock, nostalgia, even anger. Those are all valid things. Those, to me, are what make wrestling is to feel those things. So there is something to be said that being sometimes aggrieved with some decision making is not inherently a bad thing, as long as you're watching it for the purpose of being entertained and not to try and give yourself a pat on the back. So if you find that you're listening to this today or you're watching this, if you're watching the video version, and you're like, wow, you know, I think I've been guilty of doing that a few times. I know I do that quite often. And I know I've done that in the past too. You're probably then thinking to yourself, well, how do I actually go out of my way then to get out of that mindset? You know, to get away from being stuck in the predictions and go back to actually enjoying the product again. Yeah, here's something that has worked for me. Maybe it will help you as well. First one to try is to watch a show live without social media open. You know, no spoilers, no notifications, no breaking tweets like a minute after or something. You've just seen something go live. You know, just sit back on your couch, grab a drink, grab a few of your friends. If you live local and you can all get together to watch something, as if it's like, I don't know, the early to mid 2000s, and as if you've got no clue what's going to come next. And you'll be surprised at how much better this hits. Now, I understand that in the UK that is not easy. You know, we do not live in a time zone that suits a lot of these big American events. But particularly right now, as obviously this episode's going to be going out, you know, or it's being recorded, around about the time of Crown Jewel. We don't know when it's going to go live. So these shows right now are actually perfect for that. And obviously we've had some, we're going to have Mania in Saudi at some point that is going to be perfect for that. But trying to find that chance of watching something live like that, where you can put the distractions, put your phone away, and just live in the moment, you would be surprised at how much better wrestling does hit. Another thing is to try and stop doom scrolling through all the outrage threads that you see on, you know, your Twitters and your Reddits. You don't necessarily need to read every hot take about how someone's been buried someone else or someone's push has been killed. Sometimes it's not necessarily true. I think it's something to be said that WWE is doing an awful lot more of long-term storytelling. So there's an awful lot of instances where you have to just sort of take stock of what's happening and just let things play out sometimes. Now, we talk a lot in this show, The Golden Shovel, about predicting things. So it is an awful lot of what we do, but we do still find the enjoyment in the matches themselves. So maybe then have a post-mortem after the fact, but, you know, just one to bear in mind. And a third thing that you could try is to pick your favourites and follow them rather than try to follow the noise. You know, you don't have to necessarily be tribal about it or anything, you know, just find the wrestlers, find the stories, find the promotion that you enjoy and just stick with it. So an example being that if you really love Monday Night Raw but you're not too fussed on SmackDown, just don't watch SmackDown. Just keep up with the updates. Say the day after a show, you can use plenty of people like ourselves. You could be using us on TikTok or our podcast. Just find that information out there and just stick to what you enjoy. If you prefer NXT than the main storylines, that's okay. You do not have to be someone who watches everything to be a real fan. So just learn to tap out when something's not fun. If you even don't like a certain storyline in a show, there's nothing wrong with fast forwarding 15 minutes past. You know, you're allowed to curate your wrestling experience. It's not homework. You know, it's entertainment. and try and remember why you fell in love with wrestling. Like every fan that I've spoken to has a moment or moments. That one that hooked them. Like maybe it was something like Hogan slamming Andre the Giant, or Austin versus Rock, the Shield's debut, the first time you heard the glass shatter, Stone Cold's entrance music, and you lose your mind. For me personally, it was the first time I sat down to watch wrestling on like a Saturday morning here in the UK. We used to have it on, I think it was Sky One, used to have it. And The Rock's music hit. And you had this big megastar come out. Immediately captivated the crowd. The crowd went nuts. And I think that was the moment for me where I was like, wow, this is cool. What's going to happen next? And then the rest was kind of history. Because I mean, that is ultimately the thing, right? Everyone started off here as a fan. Not necessarily a critic or not necessarily an analyst, just like a kid, or if you're in the case of me as an adult coming back to the product with a hiatus of several years. You've watched someone do something incredible in a ring or on a mic backstage, something along like that. And over time, podcasts like ourselves, dirt sheets, social medias, we all became critics, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It is part of growing up as a fan, and there is nothing wrong with doing what we do and, taking a step back and analysing things. But it is always worth remembering that the key is to try and find that spark again. That moment where you stop thinking about booking logic and just go, holy shit, that was absolutely awesome. That's the energy that you want back. And, let's be real though. When we talk about the IWC, we're never putting that genie back in the bottle. We all love analysing stuff. We all love making predictions. We all love being part of a conversation. And the trick isn't, like, I'm not sitting here telling you and telling myself, look, just ignore all this. Just go sit on your couch and don't talk to anyone and sequester yourself from the rest of the world. Absolutely not. It's just to find the balance. Watch wrestling like a fan. Talk about it as like an analyst. But don't let one destroy the other. Because if you're constantly looking for flaws, you will always find them. And this doesn't necessarily something that is purely about wrestling. That this is something that you'll find in all walks of life. It's a little bit philosophical, a bit more deeper than I expected to go to today. But if you're looking for moments, if you're looking for those flashes of storytelling magic, those like one or two big moves, you'll always find those as well if you look for them. And those moments, those are why we all fell in love with this weird and wonderful sport in the first place. So yeah, maybe the IWC isn't going anywhere. And maybe we'll just continue doing this forever. I for one would love that. I love having these podcasts that we sit down, twice a week and just shoot the shit about wrestling. It is some of the most fun that I have each week. But if you can tune out the noise, maybe even try your best to avoid spoilers if you can, and just watch wrestling for the joy of it, for the art that the men and women in the ring are putting on the show for you, you will realise that it's still the same thing that hooked you years ago. The moments, the emotion and the madness. You don't have to watch every show. You don't have to argue every take or know every insider rumour. You just have to enjoy it your way. You just have to find the bits of the product or products out there that you love the most and just follow them, because you will be much happier for it. I promise you that. So tell me, what's one thing that you still genuinely love about wrestling today? If you listen to this in audio, there is a link in the description in the Buzzsprout link that you can send us an SMS and we will have a read of those and be more than glad to bring these to the next podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can jump into the comments and you can let us know What's your sort of favourite things in wrestling right now? You also find us on Twitter and on TikTok, both at The Golden Shovel. Let's make wrestling fun again. One fan at a time. And if you're new here to the podcast, this is something that we're doing that's a little bit different. We always do a Saturday squash where we, pick out like top 5 wrestlers or, best entrance theme tunes, that kind of thing. We have a little bit of fun with it on a Saturday. And this take that I've brought to you today is a little bit different again. So let me know if you're a regular listener and you want to hear and see more of these things. If you are new, there's loads of different ways that you can support the podcast. You can, tell your friends, go out there and spread that love and tell like one friend that would love this. Go and check these guys out. They might enjoy it, and then you'll have another thing to talk about with them. If you're listening on audio, rate us 5 stars, like, subscribe, follow, whatever the terminology is for wherever you are on your favourite podcatcher or on YouTube. That helps the show out a ton. Lets us know what things you're enjoying. Leave comments, as I suggested earlier. Be part of this conversation, because ultimately, without people being out there listening to it, we'd just be shouting into the void. So we really appreciate each and every one of you that takes the time to download this, to sit and watch it and listen to it every week. It is much appreciated. So I've been Ross. This is the Golden Shovel Wrestling Podcast, and remember, sometimes the best way to enjoy wrestling is to stop trying to win the argument and just pop for the moment. See you guys next time.